The highway stretched endlessly before David Miller, a black ribbon unspooling beneath the worn tires of his Peterbilt 389. He'd been a long-haul trucker for over 20 years, a career born out of necessity after his Army service ended. David was a pragmatic man, grounded in the tangible world of diesel engines, delivery schedules, and the rhythmic thrum of tires on asphalt. Supernatural whispers, ghost stories, things that went bump in the night. They belonged in cheap paperback novels or late-night TV, not in the cab of his rig. Until that night. The night that scraped away his skepticism and left a raw, chilling dread in its place. A dread that now made him murmur a prayer before every journey. He was pushing hard, too hard. The load was urgent. Perishable medical supplies bound for a small hospital cluster in the remote reaches of the Pacific Northwest. David had been awake for nearly 72 hours, fueled by a toxic cocktail of black coffee, greasy truck stop food, and energy drinks that now seemed to be abandoning him like fair-weather friends. His eyes felt gritty. His muscles ached with a deep, bone-weary exhaustion, and a fog of fatigue was settling over his mind. The only thoughts circling were of the end. Reaching the depot in the little town of Pinecrest Bend, checking into the familiar, slightly musty motel room, collapsing onto the stiff mattress, and then, tomorrow, the blessed oblivion of a full day's sleep. Maybe a visit to the local bar for a steak and a beer, a small reward for the punishing drive. But sleep. Sleep was the only true reward he craved. It was a clear, unnaturally bright night. A full moon hung low and heavy in the ink-black sky, casting long, sharp shadows across the dense, towering evergreens that pressed close to the highway on either side. The silver light washed over the landscape, turning the world monochrome and strangely sharp. David had always found comfort driving at night. The solitude, the hypnotic rhythm. He'd never feared the dark. His rig, affectionately nicknamed Bertha, boasted powerful HID headlights that cut through the deepest blackness like a blade. Tonight, however, a different kind of unease prickled at the back of his neck, unrelated to the darkness he could easily banish. It was the profound, unsettling emptiness. For the past 3 hours, since leaving the last vestiges of interstate traffic far behind, he hadn't seen a single vehicle. No headlights approaching, no taillights receding into the distance, not even the distant glow of a farmhouse. Just him, Bertha, the moon, and the silent, watchful forest. It felt less like solitude and more like abandonment. Late, he muttered to himself, his voice raspy in the quiet cab. He cleared his throat. Everyone's tucked in, motel's full. Just gotta push through. He fumbled for the radio knob, desperate for any human sound, any crackle of static that wasn't the monotonous drone of the engine. He tuned through static-laden country stations, snippets of talk radio, finally settling on a faint classic rock channel, playing something with a heavy bass line. As he adjusted the volume, movement flickered in the side mirror. His breath hitched. Something dark, low to the ground, was pacing the rig, just visible in the moonlight and the spill of his running lights. He instinctively rolled down the driver's side window, the cool night air rushing in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Leaning out slightly, squinting against the wind, he saw it clearly, and terror, cold and sharp, lanced through his fatigue. It was dog-like, but impossibly, grotesquely wrong. Its shoulders were higher than the bottom of his cab door. It moved with a fluid, predatory grace that seemed utterly alien, its limbs pistoning with impossible power. It kept pace effortlessly with Bertha, currently cruising at a steady 60 miles per hour. Its coat wasn't just black, it was a void, absorbing the moonlight rather than reflecting it. The sheer scale, larger than any horse David had ever seen, defied logic. A hallucination. It had to be. He was finally succumbing to exhaustion, his brain short-circuiting. He slammed his foot down on the accelerator. The big diesel engine roared in protest, then surged forward. The speedometer needle climbed, 65, 70, 75 mille pommes. The road was relatively straight here, flanked by the endless wall of trees. He risked another glance. The creature was still there. It hadn't fallen back an inch. It matched the increased speed without apparent effort, its massive paws striking the asphalt shoulder with a rhythm that was now audible even over the engine and wind. A heavy, unnerving thud, thud, thud. Adrenaline, potent and electric, flooded David's system, burning away the last vestiges of drowsiness. This was real. This impossible, terrifying thing was real. A creature out of nightmare, black as pitch and faster than a freight train, running beside his speeding truck through the deserted wilderness. Panic clawed at his throat. How? Why? A curve loomed ahead, marked by a faded yellow sign. Hope, fragile and desperate, flared in David's chest. Around that bend lay Pinecrest Bend. Civilization, streetlights, people, safety. He took the curve carefully, fighting the urge to floor it, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. As the road straightened, the distant, beautiful glow of the town's outskirts appeared, a cluster of warm lights nestled in the dark valley below. Relief washed over him, so potent it felt like physical warmth. It was short-lived. The creature surged forward, closing the gap between them with terrifying speed. In seconds, it was running mere feet from the driver's side door, its massive head level with David's window. Its proximity was overwhelming. An unnatural cold seemed to radiate from it, cutting through the cab's warmth. David yanked the window up with a frantic jerk, the electric motor whining. He stomped the accelerator again, pushing Bertha past 85, then 90. The engine screamed. The road blurred. It was reckless, suicidal on this winding mountain highway, but blind terror overrode caution. The creature kept pace. Effortlessly, it turned its massive head towards him. David froze. His blood turned to ice water. Those eyes. They weren't animal eyes. They were vast, bottomless pools of darkness, yet filled with an ancient, chilling intelligence. They held no malice, no rage, only a profound, alien awareness. They looked through him, understanding his exhaustion, his fear, his very soul laid bare. It saw him, completely and utterly. The message in that gaze was paralyzing. I am here. I am inevitable. It knew things, terrible, unthinkable things, and it knew him. He screamed, a raw, guttural sound torn from his throat, lost in the roar of the engine. He pushed Bertha harder, the speedometer trembling near 100. The town lights grew brighter, closer. He saw the reflective sheen of a green road sign flashing past. Pinecrest Bend, 1 mile, speed limit 35. And just like that, the creature was gone. One moment it was there, a monstrous silhouette against the moonlit trees. The next, it had vanished. Not fallen behind, not darted into the woods, simply ceased to be beside him. David's foot eased off the gas, the truck slowing as if of its own accord, the adrenaline ebbing to leave him shaking violently. He navigated the final descent into Pinecrest Bend on autopilot, his mind a chaotic whirlpool of disbelief and terror. He pulled into the familiar gravel lot of Hank's 24-hour stop and go, the only place lit up at this hour. He killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. He practically fell out of the cab, his legs trembling, muscles liquid. Leaning heavily against the cold metal flank of Bertha, He fumbled a cigarette from his pack with shaking hands, lighting it with 3 attempts. He sucked in the acrid smoke, trying to steady his breathing, to force his jangled thoughts into some semblance of order. Hallucination, exhaustion, breakdown. The rational explanations tumbled through his mind. It had to be. Monsters like that didn't exist. They couldn't. He'd pushed himself too far, flirted with the edge, and his mind had snapped. He needed sleep. He needed to see a doctor, maybe a psychiatrist. The thought, once unthinkable, now seemed grimly necessary. Stubbing out the cigarette, he pushed open the glass door of the convenience store. A familiar electronic chime usually announced entry, but tonight, nothing. Silence. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh, sterile glow on the aisles of snacks, drinks, and motor oil. Behind the counter stood Becky, the usual night cashier, a friendly woman in her 40s, except she wasn't moving. She stood rigidly, a faint, fixed smile on her face, staring straight ahead, unblinking. Her eyes looked vacant, glassy. David stopped just inside the door, the hairs on the back of his neck rising, the silence pressed in. He realized with a fresh wave of ice-cold dread, the door hadn't made a sound when he pushed it. No chime, no squeak of hinges, nothing. He scanned the small store. Empty, no other customers. No Hank, the owner, usually puttering in the back. No sign of Mike, the burly night security guard. Just Becky, frozen in place like a mannequin. David's breath came in short, sharp gasps. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Was he still asleep? Was this part of the nightmare? Had the creature followed him? Was it here? David? Becky's voice cut through the oppressive silence, sharp and normal, yet utterly incongruous. You okay, hun? You look like you've seen a ghost. She blinked, the fixed smile replaced by a look of genuine concern. She leaned forward slightly, her posture now relaxed, natural. The vacancy was gone. Before David could stammer a reply, the door crashed open behind him. 3 boisterous teenagers stumbled in, laughing loudly, smelling of cheap beer and night air, heading straight for the cooler. Simultaneously, the door to the back stockroom opened, and Mike, the security guard, ambled out, yawning and scratching his stubbled chin. "Quiet night, Bex," he rumbled. A moment later, an older couple entered, debating what kind of chips to get for their drive. The store was suddenly jarringly normal, bright, noisy, mundane. The paralyzing silence, Becky's terrifying stillness, it had vanished as completely as the creature on the highway. David stood rooted to the spot, feeling like a ghost himself, disconnected from the cheerful chaos around him. The contrast was dizzying. "David?" Becky prompted again, her brow furrowed. "You need something? Coffee? You look awful pale." I'm fine, Becky," David managed, his voice hoarse. "Just long drive. Real long." He forced a weak smile, grabbed a bottle of water and a pack of gum, paid with trembling hands, avoiding eye contact, and fled back to the relative sanctuary of his truck. He drove the short distance to the motel on autopilot. The encounter at the store, so brief yet so profoundly unsettling, seemed to confirm the unreality of the highway terror. Exhaustion, hallucinations, a brain pushed beyond its limits. That was the only explanation that allowed him to function. He checked in under the bored gaze of the night clerk, dragged his duffel bag to the room, and didn't even bother removing his boots before collapsing face first onto the bed. Sleep claimed him instantly, a black pit of oblivion. He woke 10 hours later to the harsh light of midday slicing through the thin curtains. The motel room was quiet, ordinary. Sunlight dust motes danced in the air. The terror of the night felt distant, blurred like a half-remembered nightmare. He sat up slowly, muscles protesting, his mind clearer than it had been in days. He replayed the events, the impossible creature, its intelligent eyes, the frozen store, the sudden return to normalcy. But the rational explanation of exhaustion now rang hollow. Too many details were seared into his memory with terrifying clarity. The thud of the creature's paws, the unnatural cold radiating from it, the depth of understanding in those bottomless eyes, the utter silence, and Becky's terrifying immobility before the world snapped back. It felt less like a hallucination and more like a warning, or an encounter with something operating just outside the rules of his world. A new, chilling understanding dawned on him, colder and more profound than the initial terror. That creature, that impossible black hound of impossible size and speed, hadn't been chasing him. It hadn't been trying to attack him. It had been waiting. Patiently, relentlessly. Keeping pace, watching with that ancient, knowing gaze, waiting for the inevitable mistake born of 72 hours of sleepless delirium, waiting for the micro-sleep, the drifting lane departure, the missed curve on that treacherous mountain road. It was waiting for the crash that would turn Bertha into a twisted metal coffin and spill David Miller's lifeblood onto the cold asphalt. The creature hadn't been a monster hunting prey. It was an emissary, a harbinger. Death itself, or its messenger, running alongside him in the moonlight, waiting for exhaustion to finally claim its due. He hadn't just seen something impossible on that highway. He'd stared directly into the patient, intelligent eyes of his own mortality, waiting for him to falter. The town limits, the mundane safety of Pinecrest Bend, hadn't saved him. Something else had intervened. Luck? Fate? Some unknown grace? He didn't know. He only knew that one foot had been firmly planted on the other side during those terrifying miles, and the memory of those bottomless eyes, filled not with hunger, but with infinite, patient knowing, would haunt every mile of every journey he took from that night forward. He prayed now, not out of newfound faith, but out of a desperate, bone-deep understanding of how thin the veil between the road and the abyss truly was, and of the patient, dark-eyed watchers who paced just beyond the headlights,